Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. His Worship Abdon Mason, Mayor of the Borough of Point Fortin. Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. The Honorable Major General Retired Edmund Dillon, Minister of National Security. All other Cabinet Ministers and Members of Parliament. Members of the media, people of Point Fortin and environs, members of our audience, viewers and listeners. Pleasant good evening and welcome to Conversations with the Prime Minister. I am Nicole Olivier, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and I will be your moderator for this evening's conversation. To our live audience and those tuning in on CTV television, the C News Facebook, various radio stations, 90.5 FM, 91.9 FM, I-95.5 FM, 102.1 FM. Welcome to Conversations with the Prime Minister, held at the Point Fortin East Secondary School. This is the second in a series of national conversations led by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to discuss issues of importance to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. As our nation presses forward through challenging times, the government of Trinidad and Tobago wants to engage with citizens to share pertinent information on our country's development. Earlier this year, we began this series with our first conversation held at the Maloney Amphitheater in February. Roughly 400 persons and thousands more at home joined us to hear critical updates in the areas of national security, energy, social development, and more, and to ask the Prime Minister about the government's short-term and medium-term plans. We have come today to hear your views, your questions, and gain your feedback. We encourage you to engage with our panel in a positive way as we aim to create meaningful dialogue between government and citizens. This is how we work together to develop Trinidad and Tobago's true potential. So without further ado, please welcome our panel this evening. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, and of course the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley. Before we go to the panelists, I would like to invite the Minister of National Security to make a brief opening address. Mr. Dillon.
Thank you very much, my colleague and next-door neighbor, Member of Parliament for Labrie. The Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Franklin Khan, residents of Point Fortin and environs, my Parliament colleagues, members of the media, a pleasant good evening to you all. I thank you very much for being here this evening and to give a warm welcome, a Point Fortin welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister and my Parliament colleagues. I want to briefly touch on the areas of national security. The reason being, there is no other area of public policy that is as important in terms of manpower, resources, and money other than national security. One that you would notice almost every day in the print, electronic media, in discussions throughout. It touches us to the very core of our very existence and our reality. This government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago considers the crime, violence, and criminality to be of deep concern to us. And if we are to achieve our 2030 goals in maintaining sustainable development for Trinidad and Tobago, then we are compelled as a government to ensure that we provide a safe and secure environment for that sustainable development to flourish and develop, and for our citizens to live in a peaceful environment, for our investors to want to come to Trinidad and Tobago. So this evening I want to share with you some of the initiatives in the national security environment. Today, I'm saddened because a while ago I got the news that right in Point Fortin there was a murder of a young lady. In Point Fortin, this evening I got it on Loop News, I'm still confirmed. I'm saddened by the amount of death that's taken place, the amount of murder that's taken place, and that's what we are measured by. But we will not lose hope, ladies and gentlemen. This government and the agencies of national security will continue to pursue relentlessly our effort to reduce the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago, to reduce the crime in Trinidad and Tobago. But this phenomenon is not a single entity. It is multidimensional. It is multidimensional by definition, and therefore it is also multidimensional in the way in which we apply our measures to treat with it. The government recognizes that no one entity can treat with it by itself, and so we have adopted a whole of government approach, involving all the ministries of the government to play a part in the fight against this phenomenon that can destroy us, and we will not let it destroy us. But we also speak to a whole of country approach, because we believe that the whole country must be mobilized to treat with the issues of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. The government has adopted what we consider an all-out approach, but we are focusing right now on two what I call frontal attacks. Two frontal attacks to treat with the issues of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. The first pointed attack is our legislative agenda, and I thank the Attorney General for his remit, for his drive, and for his enthusiasm in driving that legislative agenda. You would realize, of course, that over the last couple of months in Parliament, we have been driving that legislative agenda. We have dealt with the Strategic Services Agency Act. We have dealt with the Bail Amendment Act. We have dealt with the Judges Only, and if you read today's paper, you'll see that the President has ascended to the Judges Only Act that was passed a couple of weeks ago in Parliament. We have dealt with the plea discussion and plea agreement, the Cybercrime Act, the Whistleblowers Act. All these, ladies and gentlemen, are targeted legislation to treat the issues of crime and criminality. On the other hand, the next prong of the attack is in fact the operational prong. So we're dealing with it in a legislative attack and of course an operational attack. And the operational attack comes from the agencies of the Ministry of National Security. And so we have dealt with we anchored those attacks in 5 strategic imperatives. One, with respect to prediction, the government is prepared and continues to support that prediction pillar in terms of strengthening our intelligence gathering mechanism, strengthening our National Intelligence Agency, which falls under the Strategic Services Agency, strengthening the Criminal Gang and Intelligence Unit, strengthening the Defense Force Intelligence Unit. So we are strengthening that pillar, and the government is prepared to do what is necessary as the agencies demand what is required to strengthen that pillar. Because we believe in today's world, we must be able to do intelligence and evidence-based operations. The government is also prepared to strengthen the the deterrence pillar. And that deterrence pillar speaks to the operational presence of the agencies of national security. For instance, the law enforcement pillar, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. You would of course realize that you've seen more and more police vehicles on the roads. You have seen and hear more and more focused operations by the law enforcement supported by the Defense Force. Those are some of the deterrent pillars that we are driving. You of course realize that we are having some degree of successes as we strengthen that deterrent pillar. And then the other pillar that we must strengthen and we are pursuing relentlessly is in fact our detection pillar. We are not comfortable with where we are right now with respect to detection. We are not. And so the government is saying to the law enforcement, tell us what you need to strengthen that detection pillar, because we must increase that detection rate if we are to again act as a deterrent for crime and criminality. And you will see that we are adopting measures with respect to that detection rate. You have seen that we have moved the DNA custodian, the DNA bank system, which was in fact passed by the last government in 2012. 2013, nothing happened. 2014, nothing happened. 2015, nothing happened. We have now hired a DNA custodian, and we are now setting in place. In fact, we have started to procure the Gopal swabs and so on, the swab kits and so on. And if you don't understand for a short way that, in fact, based on the DNA Act, anyone who is arrested is subjected to be swabbed and placed in the DNA bank. So we are, in fact, procuring the swab kits right now, and starting off from later on this year, you'll see that anyone arrested would be placed in that DNA bank. We're going to start with the prisoners, because by law, we can swab every prisoner within our institution right now. So again, strengthening the detection pillar. Recently, you would have seen, based again on the Commissioner of Police request to Cabinet for additional crime scene investigators. And Cabinet again approved the recruitment of 60 additional crime scene investigators to strengthen that detection pillar in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So the government again is prepared to strengthen law enforcement. What they require, we are prepared to give them what is necessary to do their job effectively and efficiently. The other pillar, of course, is the prosecution pillar. We are also again strengthening that prosecution pillar. You realize that now in our new police station, and I'll talk to them in a while, we have what we call interview suites. Interview suites is what they call state-of-the-arts, where we can take the certain kind of evidence in a confined area, recorded as evidence to be taken, to deal again to strengthen the prosecution when matters go to court. And all our new police stations are in fact will be part of that police station constructed the interview suites. So ladies and gentlemen, the last pillar is in fact the rehabilitation, because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that after you have served your time, you have restorative justice. So you come out in a different mode, a different kind of behavior as you entered. So we again try to change your mindset, change your belief, change your behavior. So the rehabilitation pillar is the last pillar among others, but I will not go into any more detail. But those are areas again that the government is prepared to strengthen in this fight against crime, criminality and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. If you look at the success factors so far, you will see that we have achieved some success. And I don't want to talk on success too early, but it's important for us to share with them. Because based on the activities of the interagency support, I'm talking here about the Strategic Service Agency, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Customs, the Immigration, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, we continue to work assiduously. And I want to compliment them because they continue to work day in and day out to bring some kind of peace and stability to our citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. Within recent times, you have seen that we've had one of the largest drug busts that ever took place. For 2017 alone, by virtue of seizure and seize, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard have seized almost $855 million worth of cocaine and marijuana, ladies and gentlemen. $855 million worth. Imagine that coming to in our country, the kind of havoc that it would have caused. So look at what was prevented and what it would have caused us. Today, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have arrested for this year alone 6,316, as of yesterday. They have arrested some today, so that is not counting. 6,316 persons arrested between January till yesterday, the 10th. 616. They have recovered 531 arms and almost 6,576 rounds of ammunition to date off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. So when you see these figures, I want you to understand what they would have done had they not been discovered. What they would have done and created our society if they had not been discovered. And so, when you look at the issue of kidnapping, and let me put it on the record, that for the last 3 years, kidnapping for ransom was based on 3 in 2014, 3 in 2015, 3 in 2016, and there was 1 kidnapping for ransom so far for 2017. But I want to also compliment the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for this speedy way in which they were able to apprehend those who were involved in that kidnapping within a matter of days. And thank God, the life of the kidnapper was also spared in the exercise. Because you see, we want to send a strong message with those who feel that kidnapping for ransom will pay them dividends, that the law enforcement working together with the other agencies would be on top of them immediately. So the message is, do not even try the issues of kidnapping, because we will be on top of you and treat with it immediately. You would have seen again law enforcement reacting speedily. There was an incident with Nicky Crosby quite recently in Diego Martin. Within a matter of hours, they were apprehended. There was an incident in Siparia yesterday. In a matter of hours, they were apprehended. So the law enforcement are underground. They are showing a presence. But again, we cannot do it alone. We have to act and ensure that we all work together to treat with the issues of crime and criminality. Ladies and gentlemen, we must as a country all play an important part. The government and the agencies of national security continue to work assiduously, to work together in a cooperative and collaborative manner with a singleness of purpose to ensure that citizens of Trinidad and Tobago enjoy an issue of peace and stability so that people can invest and grow their children in a manner that befitting to encourage that redound to the benefit of our society. I want to thank you very much for the courtesy of attention and assure you that the agencies of the Ministry of National Security will continue to work relentlessly to reduce the crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago, to reduce the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to thank them profusely for that, but also thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for whatever contribution that you will make or you intend to make in the future to help us deal with the issues of crime and criminality. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dillon. As this is a conversation, I will ask Minister Dillon to remain on stage as we open the floor for 15 minutes to address issues of national security and local issues in the Point Fortin area. For those of you wishing to raise questions, let us establish a few ground rules. There are 2 microphones, 1 in each aisle. So please approach the microphone if you have a question to ask. When I indicate, please state your name and the general area in which you reside before making your contribution. We stress that the focus tonight is on contributions on the national conversation. So we ask for respectful presentations of issues of importance of all of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. In order to allow as many persons as possible to contribute, we'll accept only 1 question per person or a brief statement. Please ask only 1 question and allow the person next in line to make their contribution when they are called. So I will now invite persons to approach the microphones to pose questions to Minister Dillon.
Hello. Good night to the Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, our MP, Mr. Dillon, Energy Minister, Parliamentary Secretary, Council.
If we can ask that you just go straight to the question to allow as many persons as possible to be able to ask questions.
Okay. My name is Andrew Abraham, a resident of Point Fortin. I live at Clifton Hill. I want to ask 1 question that is related. 1, we have 5 gas stations in Point Fortin. 5 gas stations.
Okay, now in this segment, we want to entertain questions on national security or...
No.
Okay, well, go ahead.
5 gas stations, and 4 of the gas stations is not functioning, and the other gas station is closed most of the time. We are talking about a constituency that is P&M.
Thank you for that question.
And that has been going on for the longest while.
I will ask Minister Khan to address your question.
I am very much aware of the matter. There's 1 gas station operational. The Edu gas station is about to be open. It should be open in under a month. And the other 3 is there are challenges facing it. And the main challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is that when these old gas stations are closed, the procedure to reopen them calls for new regulations. All the tanks has to be double-walled, and there are tremendous amount of health, safety, and environmental issues that now come under the gas station legislation. So that has been the key back, and some of the operators have a problem in complying with that. But I can give you the guarantee that the Edu's gas station will be open within a month, and the 3 other gas stations have these challenges, but I'm working on it in conjunction with the Member of Parliament to get at a minimum of 3 gas stations in Point Fortin. Because understand also, historically, in the old marketing system where you had Esso, Texaco, and Shell, there was an agglomeration of 3 gas stations in close proximity to each other. That is not really how we want gas stations distributed in the modern transportation network of Trinidad and Tobago. For example, Faizabad has 3 gas stations, and Faizabad is a very quiet town. Point Fortin has 5, but there are no gas stations from the lighthouse in the Beatum straight down to where the highway ends in Penal. So we're looking at that, but in point 14 specific issue, I can guarantee within a month 2 gas stations will be open, and I will use best effort to accelerate the other 2.
Thank you, Minister. Can we have the other question, please?
Madam Chairperson.
Come on, somebody else.
Go ahead. Please state your name and the general area in which you reside.
Good evening, all protocol observed. My name is Leah Payne Figaro, and I live at 6A Savannah Road, Gonzales Village, Crapo. I am the station rep of the Point Fortin Fire Station, and my representation here today is to find out when will Point Fortin be getting their new fire station.
Thank you very much for that question, and as I'm sure you know that the Point Fortin Fire Station is also close to my heart, because as being grown up in Point Fortin, I know exactly what the situation is. But let me update you what has happened so far with respect to the fire station. The government of Trinidad and Tobago through the cabinet has approved the acquisition of land in Point Fortin for the new fire station. So that acquisition process is ongoing right now. Once that is completed, then the budget for the new fire station will be dealt with in the new fiscal year. So that I can tell you that within the next fiscal year, the construction should start in the new Point Fortin fire station. Acquisition of the property is being undertaken right now based on cabinet's approval.
Thank you, Minister.
Now, could you hear table? So far, I was deeply impressed with the up-to-date of the Minister of National Security. But I would like to ask the Minister of National Security, and by extension our beloved Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, concerning the frigid legislative agenda as to fight crime. How soon we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, can see the legislation for the forfeiture of property that were obtained by the proceeds of crime returned to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you very much for that question. While I cannot give you a timeline, I can assure you that the Attorney General is in fact pursuing that relentlessly. It's part in fact of the legislative agenda, Proceeds of Crime Act. So we are pursuing that relentlessly, again, towards the fight against crime.
Next question, please.
Pleasant good night to all. Still on crime, I am of the firm view, my name is Cuthbert Sandy, sorry. I am of the firm view that community intervention programs will assist in crime reduction. That's programs that will create partnerships with the police and the community. In light of this, our Prime Minister in his election campaign promised to initiate legislation to bring about greater empowerment for local government bodies. I want to find out what progress has been done in this area, and also what is the specific role of the community development ministries and other social services ministries in crime reduction.
Thank you for that question.
Let me answer that. Thank you very much. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. The work to effect the changes that we outlined in the last local government campaign, that work is underway. With respect to the improvement on safety and security with the involvement of local government, the commitment is to create local constabularies in the corporations, and that work is proceeding, and the intention is to expand by hiring approximately another 1,000 people between the corporations, and some of that has already begun to be implemented.
There are other developments which respect to giving local government authority, which requires some legislative changes, and that work is quite advanced, and in the next parliamentary term, very early, we would be addressing that, and you would begin to see local government being given greater responsibility, not the least of which we are heading towards allowing local government to collect and spend certain revenues which may accrue within the districts. And with respect to your first point about community role in working with law enforcement, we are actively considering a reintroduction and support of the community policing arrangement, which will bring about that cooperation between law enforcement and communities.
If I can also add to what the Prime Minister said, there is an initiative that you will see being rolled out the next month, which is the National Crime Prevention Program. What that program does in a short way is it establishes a connection between the Ministry of National Security and the 14 municipalities and Tobago House of Assembly. We're going to have community councils at the various municipalities relating to the Ministry of National Security, which will extend again the whole concept of community policing and community involvement.
Pleasant evening, all protocol observed. I'm Anita George from New Village. I want to direct my attention to the Minister of National Security, also our Prime Minister. What is being done with the influx of foreigners, especially that is coming in on any mountain, and you go to any one of the hardwares, we have like if we're in a state in Venezuela, I know some come for good intentions, for food, but we are seeing a rise in crime. The Bulgarian that has scanned the cards, they are not from here. And these Venezuelans are they have the Trinidadians working with them and everything. But I'm saying if they are not monitored, the crime rate could be higher. We are seeing every raid on the sea, there is some link with some Venezuelans with Trinidadians. Something has to be done. We are in a dire state, and we are asking, please, put mechanism in place, screen them, and I'm asking Dr. Rowley, please, get the head of CARICOM, go into Venezuela, see what peace could come, because this could happen in Trinidad, and I'm watching it. When your neighbor house is on fire, wake up.
Minister Dillon.
Thank you very much. Let me assure you that we continue to monitor our borders, both on the maritime side through the Trinidad Coast Guard, and enforce our borders through the immigration. But we are also conscious of that, and so we are monitoring not only the movement of Venezuelans, but other nationalities who enter our country illegally. At this point in time, our detention center is filled to the beams with people who have entered the country illegally, and we're treating with them even as we speak. So we continue to monitor them as much as possible.
Let me just add a little to that and say, Trinidad and Tobago is only 7 miles from Venezuela. And we've always had an interaction between our country and our nearest neighbor. Given the difficulties within Venezuela now, some additional persons have been coming here, but it would not be fair to say that they have in fact been responsible for our crime wave. I want to say to you that last week at the heads of government meeting in CARICOM, the report to us from the department that is monitoring this indicated that 30,000 CARICOM citizens have been repatriated through deportation to our territories. Our own citizens who have come back, largely having committed offenses abroad. And also, we are a relatively open society, and people come and go under regulation and laws. So we will have people coming and going. We will have to pay particular attention to Venezuela and the situation there. And you are absolutely right that any deterioration there could have deleterious consequences for Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why last week, Trinidad and Tobago, through our intervention, insisted that CARICOM address this issue from the regional standpoint, and in fact, we have extended CARICOM's offering of any kinds of assistance to generate dialogue between the arguing parties in Venezuela, so as to provide them with an opportunity if they would like to talk and replace violence with dialogue. But we can't enter Venezuela and do anything in there, because the underlying principle of our foreign policy is non-interference and non-intervention. But we are interested neighbors and very concerned. So we are monitoring the situation and we are looking at our interests in the process.
Thank you very much. We will just entertain 4 more questions in this segment before we move on to the Prime Minister's address. Gentlemen.
Pleasant good night. All protocols observed. Good night to all in attendance. As it pertains to national security, Minister, I heard you give an overview. Roger Brooms is the name, excuse me. A member of Point Fortin Police Community Council. And so we have been having discussions, and the area of national security, as you have mentioned earlier, we are seeing a lot of young offenders now on the scene. And my question is there a nexus between, because we realize that Ramesh Diosaran have been coming in with analytic data that points to certain things being, the root of it being stemming from the home, that institution. The question is, we are trying to find out if there's any possibility of setting up community networking, social networking, as it pertains to psychology and sociology and criminology, having a package so that in communities people could be better educated to deal with crime and so forth. Because we are seeing a lot of young offenders. And what is happening is we are realizing that the root of it is stemming from the home. So we may have all these things in place, but if we are not addressing it from that level, it is going to filter from primary into secondary, even onto tertiary, and some of the dropouts, we realize that they turn to crime. So I am saying here, people like Renee Cummins and Dr. Douglas, clinical psychologists, if you can formulate some teams to have social networking, go through the communities as if it's a bandwagon or whatever they call it, moving through the communities, so that people can be better educated as to how to deal. If you can
keep your question concise, please.
With some of the issues, you know, so that everybody will be better enlightened in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. Thank you.
I just want to make a point on that. Given the nature of this problem and its longevity, it might very well be a good idea, as we seek to encourage families to look after their offsprings and to bring about guidance at the base and the home, that we also look at introducing within the school environment certain kinds of specific interventions with respect to the behavior of young people and their outlook and their behavior toward another. Because such an intervention may focus the minds of some of these young people that life is not a bed of roses, and that there is individual responsibility where they, even at the young age, are required to behave responsibly and thereby minimize the number of instances of wrongdoing on the part of young people. And therefore the curriculum may have to be looked at to see where this can be inserted for the outcome that may happen on that basis.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
All protocol observed. My name is Michael Buzz Mills, and I am not interested too much in national security at this time. What I'm interested in is why is the PNM has this attitude against Point Fortin? Why? Why?
Thank you for your question.
And I'm finished. And I will extend it to Micah Oval. Micah Oval is an institution in Point Fortin. Civic Center is an institution in Point Fortin. These places have all been demolished under the People's National Movement that Point Fortin has been faithful to. And up to today, we can't get it fixed. You know, in a 6-mile radius, we have Manny Ramjan, we have Atto Boulder, we have Brian Lara, and if I want to add, I still have Skinner's Park and Garakarapa. Point Fortin have one good ground after we are the premier place in Point. All the good place. And I am asking, why all over the years, and I'm very emotional, you know, because all PNM, all governments coming to Point have treated Point with like dogs, and make it worse. The People's National Movement, who has been there for so long, has treated us the worst, and we have been faithful to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me address that, please, because it seems to have struck a chord in the audience.
Yes.
But before I go any further, after these 4 people, we're not going to have any more from the floor at this time. Let me address that. It is very easy to identify yourself as being persecuted. Because I can tell you now, this government, at this point in time, is addressing the issue of new facilities on the 2 sites that you just mentioned. Mahika Oval and the city center. Those are issues that we are currently addressing, and if you want to ascribe it to political entities, then of course the PNM has not always been in government. This current administration came into government in September, and already those 2 projects are on the way to being rectified so that you can have new facilities. I speak to you from Diego Martin, where in Diego Martin we are only now constructing the kind of sporting facility that you aspire to here in Point Fortin, and of course Point Fortin is no different to Diego Martin. So it's not to say that we have done it for ourselves and have suffered you. These things are coming in time, and I just told you when. This government is addressing those 2 issues, and I give you the assurance that before the end of this government's term, the absence of facilities on those sites will not be an issue. And it's not because you are Point Fortin. It is because in the national scheme of things, governments before have had other priorities. Your facilities are coming now like Diego Martin, and we trust that we can have the resources to give them to you now. Thanks for your patience, but don't feel particularly selected for oppression. Because that's only going to make you feel bad for no purpose. Okay? And with respect to Point Fortin being PNM, you have had very good reason to support the PNM in the years that you have done so. So don't come with that.
No.
Thank you very much.
The Minister of Energy wants to have a word on that too.
Silence please.
Silence please.
I just cannot make that statement go unchallenged. I'll just share with you a simple story to tell you how the PNM feels about Point Fortin. I was the Member of Parliament for Ottawa Mayaro in 2000 to 2005-6. When the PNM government decided to go into LNG, I, as Member of Parliament for Ottawa Mayaro, tried to convince Patrick Manning to site LNG in Point Galiota. And he said, PNM's policy is that industrialization will take place on the west coast of Trinidad, and the Atlantic LNG industry will be sited in Point Fortin. That is the biggest thing in Point Fortin today.
Anyway, this is not this, ladies and gentlemen, please, this is not a PNM meeting.
Yeah.
So this is a government meeting with the people of Point Fortin. So keep your PNM story for later. Carry on, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated earlier, these proceedings are being carried live on television and is being viewed online And we do have a forum by which viewers online can send in questions. And we have a question that was posted on Facebook, which I would like to pose to the panel right now. What is the plan to deal with the two cash-strapped utilities, WASA and TNTEC, who are both due for rate reviews, specifically WASA, which hasn't had a rate increase since 1993?
Is somebody asking for a rate increase? Clearly,
the question was posted on Facebook by Naira Lewis.
The two utilities, WASA and TNTEC, they are not now at this precise moment facing rate increases. However, going forward, we have to review the cost of operations and the ability to fund those operations, and we are going to be, not so much TNTEC, but WASA in particular, we are going to have to review the use of funds at WASA, because WASA is using up a significant amount of money, and we are not getting value for money at WASA. And since you all acknowledge that, let me take you back a little bit to a development at WASA, which this government and which you are facing. A little while ago, a government came to us and told us that we will produce desalinated water at Point Lisas. At that time, WASA's major revenue item was selling water to the Point Lisas industrial industries. The government of the day then told us, we will produce desalinated water to supply Point Lisas, so as to allow more water to come to you here in the southern area. When we looked at the quantum of water that was going to be provided by the desalination plant, I asked the question in the parliament, is it the government's intention that desalinated water will enter the domestic supply? Yes. Because if the answer is yes, at what cost and who is going to pay for it? And if the answer is no, why are we producing that much desalinated water for Point Lisas? The end result of that story is that we are now relying on desalinated water in South and Central Trinidad, and the great majority of WASA's revenue is now being paid in US dollars to desalinated operations in Point Lisas. As a result of which, WASA's finances are completely out of whack, and WASA is now relying on subsidies from the Treasury for its operations and having to find large amounts of US dollars to pay for the water in your tap in South and Central Trinidad. That is a major issue which now has to be addressed, and as I speak to you now, WASA is struggling to pay its current bills to the desalination plant. So these are issues that this government will have to address in the coming months and years. So we leave that for another night or another day. We move on.
Thank you. I will just take one more question in this segment, following which we will allow the Prime Minister to make his address. So the lady on the right, I will take your questions. The others, please have your seat and you will be able to ask your questions in the second segment.
All protocol followed. My name is Sharon Joyo. Question to National Security Minister. I am concerned because I don't know the answer to this question in reference to the dips that reported from the US and even with the group of people who was ISIS. What is in place to monitor the going and the comings of these people? Is it legal? Is it not legal? Because what has been happening is that they are misplaced when they come to Trinidad or they come to their families, pure distress. And it stems from there. A lot of crime is being committed by these people who, I don't want to segregate them, but I'm very much interested to know what does Trinidad have in place for the dips, the deportees, especially coming out of United States prisons.
Thank you for your question, but I'm not sure where you may have gotten the evidence that the deportees are involved in crime so much. But let me tell you that what happens when someone is deported? We receive the file in advance, so we understand where they're deported, why they're deported. They're viewed at the airport, so we build a dossier on them in relation to what comes with them through the international agencies, and therefore, based on the assessment, we know who to monitor, who not to monitor. So we continue to do that. But your statement that the deportees are in fact involved in crime, you have to have some evidence on that as far as that is concerned.
And let me just for the national community's benefit explain. A lot of those deportees are deported for simply overstaying their time in America. There are the others who are deported for having committed crimes, and subsequent to their sentencing and incarceration, they are then deported. But it's not every deportee is a criminal for having committed some significant crime.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recognize present with us in the audience several cabinet ministers. Minister Maxi Coffey, Minister of Public Administration and Communication. Senator Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. The Honorable Terence Dayal Singh, Minister of Health. The Honorable Nayan Gadsby Dolly, Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. The Honorable Minister of Education, Mr. Anthony Garcia, and Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Mr. Kazim Hussein. So at this point...
Thank you very much, MP Nicole Olivier. After that lively introduction on the very vexing issue of national security, we can spend the whole night on that subject alone. But given that we only have 2 hours, I would want to move on to some other issues. Permit me, first and foremost, to thank you all for coming out here in such large numbers to take part in this exercise. And I just want to spend a few minutes laying the foundation of our current circumstances, because you see, we are not the only people in the country who are talking. In fact, the government has not been talking enough. And as a result of that, other people who are talking may not be. Excuse me, those of you who are standing at the back, we have a few empty chairs up here, at least 4 of them. Please come and sit there. Be more comfortable. Thank you very much. Sorry we didn't have enough chairs for all of you. But I was saying, the government has not been talking enough so as to treat with maybe misinformation or a lack of appreciation for what we are dealing with. Let me spend a few minutes just telling you exactly what we are dealing with. We came into office at the change of government in September 2015. And we came in knowing, like the rest of the country, that the circumstances in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the quality of life, whether it's in education, in health, in national security, in foreign debt, those circumstances are largely dependent or influenced by the government's ability to earn and spend money, because everybody knows that it is public sector expenditure that drives the economy of Trinidad and Tobago as we know it. So if government revenues are strong, then there's a lot that the government can do. If revenues are weak and falling, notwithstanding our best desires of wishes and needs, there is only so much we can do. Between September and now, we saw oil prices fall as low as $27 a barrel. And let me tell you what the effect of that has been. In the financial year of 2014-2015, government's revenues, forget which government it was, but the government's revenues in Trinidad and Tobago was $57.3 billion in the 2014-2015 period. Because of changes in earnings in the energy sector, gas and oil, the following year, which is 2015-2016, which is the first year of this government's presence in office, those revenues fell to $44.9 billion. That is $12 billion less. So obviously, this government cannot pretend or ought not to try to spend money in the way previous governments spent money, simply because common sense will tell us the money just is not there. We, of course, even before the government change took place, and with earnings at $57 billion for the year 2014-2015, in order to have enjoyed the quality of life and to meet the expenditure patterns that we have had going on up to that point. In the period 2010 to 2015, this country borrowed to spend on its people $30 billion. And that was during a period like 2008 when we had the highest level of earnings in the history of the country. So borrowings had always been an interesting part and an integral part of our country's management. But then we were borrowing against fairly high earning levels. So come 2015, and the earning levels have dropped considerably, and suddenly the new government also had to borrow. And borrowings become even more important now because we were borrowing to close a very large gap between revenue and expenditure. In the period 2015-2016, in order to prevent the economy from collapsing and causing the kinds of hardships that you may not even think about, this government has borrowed $12 billion. In short, what that means, in order to keep our payments and our expenditure going, we have had to borrow to fund our lifestyle. I tell you this so that when conversations arise and people start demanding more from less and threatening to mash up the place, it's against that background that those demands are being made. And during a period when earnings were quite strong and future projections were quite positive, certain kinds of salary increases could have been afforded. Today, when we are facing and living the reality of those kinds of reductions, it would not be a reasonable expectation that you can get the same kinds of support from the government as you were getting when revenues were there. So when you hear people say that they have had this loss of income, loss of jobs in Trinidad and Tobago, let me go to that situation for a minute and tell you something. This government has pursued, against the background of that revenue loss and that borrowing that I just mentioned, this government has pursued a policy of trying to ensure, as far as we are able to, that persons in jobs try and keep those jobs, even if we can't pay you salary increases or substantial increases. So the first priority is to hold on to the jobs that you have. And given that the government is the main supplier of revenue to create jobs both in the public sector and, I dare say, the private sector, that objective to keep jobs and not have engaged in any major layoffs across the board to balance the budget is one of the best management strategies this government has been successful in doing so far to bring our level of expenditure down while not collapsing the economy and depriving large numbers of persons of employment opportunities. So, on the government's payroll, the information that I have from the Ministry of Labor is that there are about 50,000 public servants on the government's payroll, of which about 20,000 of those are daily paid, 19,000 exactly, and 13,800 as contract workers, and 20,000 monthly paid. Those are the kinds of levels of people who are on the government's payroll. And you live here, you would notice that we have had no major layoffs on the public sector. Question is, how long can we do that if the revenues continue to decline? I leave that with you. And of course, we have, if you look at the number of persons employed in the country, 2015, about 61,000. A little less, approximately 60,000 persons are employed now. So we've lost a few jobs, but we've also created quite a few jobs. And I was hoping tonight to have with me, as a matter of fact, I did have with you, I just didn't pick it up, the actual details of how jobs have been lost and how jobs have been created. But at the balance, we are maintaining roughly the same amount of employment in Trinidad and Tobago. There has been no overall collapse. And with respect to the manufacturing sector, this weekend we've had the trade and investment exhibition in Macoya. 11,000 people attended that event this weekend, and it has been sold out. It was the largest in the history of the event. And the manufacturing sector has been creating quite a few jobs. I think it's about 3,900 jobs have been created in that area. The construction sector, which is now picking up again, driven by government expenditure, has been creating some new jobs. And of course, there are other areas where new job opportunities are being created as we make these opportunities available, largely driven by public sector expenditure. So I tell you this so that you can understand that we as a country, we are not out of the woods, and we are in a situation that requires good, sound economic management. The news today will tell you that our savings in US dollars, our national reserves, would have fallen from upwards of $9 billion to down to upwards of $8 billion. We cannot, over and above the borrowing that we've been borrowing, draw down on our savings and continue to spend at those levels, because what is the outcome of that? When the savings are finished, what are we going to do? And we need to have a certain level of reserves to be able to conduct business in this country. So the government has to keep an eye on that. So in managing the government's affairs, expenditure, revenue, reserves, and foreign exchange availability, these are the kinds of things that the government is managing. So it's easy for persons who don't have any responsibility in the country to get up and say, well, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Don't touch this, don't touch that, don't touch me, don't touch her. Question is, we have to touch something. We have to do something. And when you criticize the government for having done A and having done B, see that criticism against statements as to what really were the alternatives or what are the alternatives. I want to conclude this commentary by saying that one of the major things that we are facing now is the whole question of Petrotrin, the state enterprise sector, the state energy company, which is a company, a large company, very important in the economy, owned 100% by the state. But right now, owes billions of dollars that it can't pay, and its operations are in fact money losing across the board. And as I look at the forecast for oil coming in the future, one is seeing lower than $40 oil. So you can't even fix your hopes on increased oil price to get us out of that. And as against that background, this government has put a committee in place to do a comprehensive review of Petrotrin and to advise the cabinet. That matter is now before the cabinet, and I want to pass over now to the Minister of Energy to make a short commentary to you, and then we open the floor and discuss these matters.
Yeah, thank you, Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister. Point Fortin community. The Prime Minister spoke about the decline in revenue. A significant part of that decline came from the energy sector. And it was prefaced by a couple of factors. One, decline in production, both in gas and in oil, and also falling prices. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we are price takers. Nothing little Trinidad and Tobago could do on the international energy market to influence price. Prices are influenced by other factors. We are price takers. So what we have to do is structure an industry and structure the cost of an industry that could live on fairly soft prices. And that is the challenge we face now. As it regards production, we have a lot of things in place that we are going to increase the production of gas. There's something called a gas curtailment issue, where we have a deficit of approximately 900 million to 1 billion cubic feet short. BP in particular is working assiduously, and they are finding reserves. They are producing reserves in also Enron and Shell. So hopefully by 2019, with the initiative with the Venezuelan Dragon Field, we should be getting the gas equation back to equilibrium. As the Prime Minister hinted, Petrotrin control the oil assets of Trinidad and Tobago by and large. Petrotrin's biggest assets is right offshore Point Fortin, Trinidad. Nothing has been done in Trinidad for almost a decade. Petrotrin made some fundamental investment errors. I don't want to go into it in details, but how can you spend over $6 billion on a refinery upgrade and didn't spend a cent on Trinidad to upgrade the platforms and the infrastructure, the compressor station, and the pipelines? Because Point Fortin has a vested interest in Petrotrin. And I ask the people of Point Fortin in particular to work with us, because we are now coming to terms with the challenges that Petrotrin face. And as a government, and as the Minister of Energy, and in conjunction with the Cabinet and the Prime Minister, we are going to craft solutions for Petrotrin in the best possible way to keep that company afloat, to keep it alive, but everybody, every single stakeholder, from the trade union, from the management, from the residents of Point Fortin, has to make sacrifice. I say no more.
Let me join the Minister in carrying this conversation a little further before we come to the floor. Because you see, I want the population in Trinidad and Tobago to make decisions based on fact. Information that is accurate, data that comes from a source that you can accept and believe. You know I'm the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Yes.
Is there anybody who doesn't know that? I'm the only person here who can call an election now. And there are demands from some quarters to call the election now. Should I call the election now? No. Okay, that's settled. No election now. But in the event that the election is called now, and I want you to listen to me very carefully. In the event that the election is called now, and those who are calling for it succeed in replacing us as the government, because we're going to have a government after the election. That's our system. Somebody's going to be in charge of the country. And if we are not doing a good job, and you choose others to do the job, after the election, the question you have to ask yourself is, what are they going to do differently? Let me tell you what this government has been treating with on your behalf in the energy sector. We had not been having much investment in the upstream sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And in recent months, we have had closures of plants in Point Lisas. The reason for the closing of the plants in Point Lisas is that there was not enough gas to keep the plants operational. Now you can blame us for that. But we have only been in government for 21 months. Plants in Point Lisas were having a shortage of gas for quite some time. And by the time we came into government, it reached the point where plants were being closed, and claims against the government of Trinidad and Tobago through the NGC, claims against the NGC are now being made for that shortage or non-supply of gas. That's in the pipeline. We also had a situation where, as a seller of gas where the government is the main player through the NGC, the question of an agreement on the price of gas for the Point Lisas contracts had not been addressed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me repeat that. An agreement on the price at which gas will be sold to the users in Point Lisas did not attract the attention of the government of the day before this government, because they're probably busy doing other things I don't know. But that was not done. And in the absence of an agreement on the gas price, the companies with the money to invest had literally held their hands. The negotiations on the gas price in this gas-dependent economy, in this gas-dependent country, were initiated by this government. And where contracts had expired before, companies were put on month-to-month contracts in those billion-dollar industries. The discussions on the gas price were initiated and they were quite protracted. But there comes a point where a decision has to be made as to what to accept and what not to accept, both at the end of the NGC, government, and at the other end, the oil company and their shareholders. That is the point that we reached when I went to Houston 2 or 3 months ago with Minister Young on a mission to meet BP, Shell, EOG, and also Exxon, because Exxon is not producing here, but the other three. BP, our major supplier, Shell, the new big player that bought out BG, and EOG, our second largest gas producer. I went to Houston and concluded the negotiations that had been going on. And we agreed on a gas price across the board. Immediately, that development took place, which largely passed unnoticed in this country by the many commentators who have a lot to say. As soon as we got that gas price issue settled, immediately, all those companies publicly committed themselves to investing upwards of $10 billion in Trinidad and Tobago. So when you hear our colleagues talking about who competent and who not competent, that is the competence of the government of Trinidad and Tobago today. Because if we could not have agreed on a gas price, all that we could have been signaling is a deterioration of our energy sector, our gas sector in particular, and we could have seen more closures and possibly withdrawal of companies from Trinidad and Tobago to elsewhere. That's what we are facing. And with respect to the policy in place for the using of gas, against the background of what I just told you, that there was a shortage of gas, we were being told that that shortage, yes, existed, but it was because of maintenance issues. And as soon as the maintenance was over, everything will come back to normal. Nothing was further from the truth. It was a fundamental shortage of gas available for use in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, against that background, when we came into the cabinet, within a month, we discovered that the new plant that is being built here now in Lebre, the Mitsubishi plant, the government of the day entered into a strange arrangement. And the arrangement was this, that when that plant is ready for use of gas in 2019, it's being built now, it will require gas in 2019. The arrangements agreed to by the cabinet was that that plant will get the first call on any gas that's available, which means that all the existing plants in Point Lisas now would have had to wait until that plant is satisfied before any of the short supply of gas can come to them. The result of that decision would have been Point Lisas plants would have faced closure, the old established investments would have faced discrimination, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago through the NGC would have faced mountainous lawsuits for that kind of behavior. We had to send to Japan, which is a partner, Mitsubishi, funded by the Japanese government bank, government interest in Japan. We had to take a stand on that, and it resulted in the government of Trinidad and Tobago going to Japan to talk to the Japanese and to tell them that as a government and as a people, we cannot accept that, and we are going to reverse that decision of the previous government. The Japanese were convinced, and they agreed, and we were able to change that. And that's why the Mitsubishi plant is now progressing, because it would not have progressed and be a project on that arrangement that was there in place. Put it down. The project is well underway, and of course the investments that are underway with respect to exploration and drilling, I can tell you that the future, the medium term looks good, the reports are good, and those investments will bring around some significant improvement and a change of the outlook that existed as recently as earlier this year. We lost the Angeline platform because of two reasons. One, at that delay in the decision making on that plant, and 2, the sending of signals in this part of the country, in the Southwest Peninsula, that price for construction of platforms cannot be guaranteed, and we behave as though we are competing against ourselves. So when a project is had, we can have work stoppages on a regular basis and demands being made. I want to say to people in the Southwest Peninsula, we've lost the Angeline platform. There's another one in the pipeline coming. We have to understand that we are not competing against ourselves for these projects. We are competing against other platform producers in Louisiana and Texas and so on. And we have to behave in a way to attract that investment to this area. And if we don't attract it in this area, it must not be that we have not done what has to be done to make ourselves the location of preference. Such projects bring tremendous benefits to us, and nobody's asking us to work for slave labor. Not in this day and age, because our skills are too good for that. And those who require our skills will pay for that service. But we have to be a location where when a project is won on bid and you set about to do the work, you make a name for yourself. And if I dare say, use the motto of my primary school, and you'll go very far. Good work or none. We must be known in the Southwest Peninsula, at Union Estate, at Labidco. We must be known outside of Trinidad and Tobago and in Trinidad and Tobago as a location that can compete and will do world-class jobs on all of these platforms. I have every confidence, given the discussions that we are having now with BP, that the next platform is likely to be built at Labidco in Trinidad and Tobago. So let us not make the Angeline disappointment put an end to our dream as a platform building area in the hydrocarbon sector, especially given what is happening in the Guyanese area. If platforms have to be built to service Guyana, we must be in the mix. We must be in the mix. But we'll only be in the mix if our prices and our behavior across the board are equal to or better than the offerings that they will get in Louisiana and Texas and elsewhere. We are competing for world business. I leave that with you as the people of Point Fortin. I stop now and we open the floor and we can further this or any other discussion.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We now reopen the floor for general questions. And please be reminded, when you approach the microphone, give your name and a brief contribution. We would like to get maximum participation. Gentlemen.
Hello, good night. My name is Mervyn McIntosh. I'm from Ward Road. One of the things disturbed me tonight one time, like all of us here forget, none of us have said the national anthem. That was a disrespect. That is a total disrespect. Something wrong with my mind. I work at Separe Regional Corporation for the last 37 years.
All right, stop. Since we didn't do it, let me do it now. Stand up.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you?
You lead it.
Thank you. No problem, sir. Everyone silent.
Please stand at attention for the national anthem.
Was from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare. Side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea, this our native land. We pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race find an equal place.
nation. Thank you very much. My name is Mervyn McIntosh, working at the Superior Regional Corporation. In 4 Point Common I'm working there 37 years and some months. One of the things that affecting me right now is when the then Prime Minister before Kamala here was Honorable Patrick Manning. We used to have auditor passing around. These people gain access to teeth very good now because they haven't got any auditor. The Honorable Prime Minister, from since Ole takeover in power, I have never seen the local government minister attend to Superior Regional Corporation, which is very corrupt. There is a lot of deportee working there right now. I'm very serious what I'm saying. I have documents here to prove this year. Documents to prove. I ain't boasting or I ain't saying anything. And I need for this government, not because it's Kamila's seat, I need for this government to get in into that. They're thieving bad. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Wait, one moment, please. Have your seat, have your seat. One moment, please. The thieving part is a different matter. But the matter of the deportees, let me just reaffirm the statement I made earlier on. A lot of these deportees are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
Which is Guyanese right now.
Okay, but I'm saying, don't use the word deportees implying that if a person has been repatriated to their homeland, they are to be denied access to employment. As a matter of fact, some of these deportees might be people who went abroad as juniors, they come back here as adults, and if we do not make some space for them to become participators in our national economy, the second state could be worse than the first. So let us, if we have illegal visitors who are overstaying their time or are working improperly, the immigration department has a duty to look into that. And of course, there are CARICOM arrangements in place. And finally, just remember that everywhere in the world, there are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago working and living in those countries. And the same way we expect them to be treated, we have to treat people similarly in our country. That is the yardstick that we use. And that is not to say that we are going to turn a blind eye to illegality.
Thank you. Gentleman on the right.
Good evening. I want to say a pleasant. Hello. Good evening. My name is Lennox Jordan and I live in Point Fortin. I was born in Point Fortin. Now, let me premise my statement by saying that I am one of those people who believed that the government was doing nothing. And for me tonight to come here and have this conversation with the Prime Minister, I realize that the whole of Trinidad and Tobago has to have conversations with the Prime Minister for us to know that the government is doing something. Because my information I receive from the various media. And if you go through the various media, you will never believe that the government is doing anything. So please, Mr. Prime Minister, make it your duty to have conversations with the whole of Trinidad and Tobago to let them know that the government is doing something. Anyhow, my question originally was based on national security. And I'm not talking down at this level. It was actually to be asked today.
Please proceed to ask your question.
Attorney General. The question was, what are we doing about crime at the level up there? We are dealing now here with people who are, I'm sure, have cases who have before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, who were in Parliament, who are sitting in Parliament, and who have charges against their names.
Are you asking specifically about white-collar crime?
For sure.
Thank you. I will now...
I'm talking not only white-collar crime, but I'm talking now about specifically about people who were in Parliament. Why are we accepting these people in our courts, carrying on cases? Is there not something wrong with that? I want to know from the Attorney General.
Thank you for your question.
Let me address that issue in case it comes up again, because I know there's this very strong feeling in the country that something ought to be done about persons who commit what we call white-collar crime. Firstly, there's a limit to the authority of the government with respect to matters of this nature. The government cannot, as the executive, go out there and take action against individuals because somebody say, do that. The government has to observe the law. With respect to it taking long to see any sort of response or accountability on the part of persons who may have done wrong, I've said before and I want to say it again, the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn. With respect to white-collar crime, there is a commitment by this government that where there is evidence of wrongdoing on the part of any person, regardless of your station, parliamentarian or otherwise, you mentioned parliamentarian, but there are other people in the country who may do wrong. If there is evidence of wrongdoing, we know that evidence is what is required in the court. We make a distinction between information and evidence. And insofar as there is evidence, the government of Trinidad and Tobago will not hesitate to take action to hold persons accountable. And it's against that background that you have seen recent developments of certain persons in certain government departments who may have mishandled public resources being held accountable. This is the first time in the history of Trinidad and Tobago that systematic audit and investigation unearthing solid evidence has resulted in persons being taken before the court to answer. And of course, insofar as there are those who are saying that that is a witch hunt, if you're not a witch, you have nothing to worry about. And if that is your defense, don't make it to me, make it in the courthouse when your name called. But the bottom line is, the government of Trinidad and Tobago is resolute in ensuring that one, this government does not commit those infractions. Secondly, where there is evidence of misappropriation of public funds, mishandling of public resources that warrant court action, the government will not hesitate. So don't expect that we'll act in a vai-ki-vai manner, because we are in this office by virtue of swearing to uphold the Constitution and the law. Okay? Patience.
I want to say a pleasant good night to the members of the head table. My name is Gilbert Egard, and I have come from Point Lisas, Couva.
From Couva?
Yes.
Welcome, Point Fortin.
Yeah, I have traveled here with a specific reason, and it speaks to the position of government in its drive for this new economic order as it relates to what can we do for the Southwest Peninsula. I say that against the backdrop that I've heard people brandishing in terms of knocking other CARICOM nations, for example, for like Guyanese and so on. But I think that in light of the situation where we are in terms of the economy in Trinidad and Tobago, we have to find new ways of creating life for ourselves from a national perspective. And I'll say that against when we have situations such as loss of jobs, when we have situations where we have...
Could you get to a question quickly, please?
The point I'm coming to is that I am in support of finding new ways of doing things. We have to find new ways of doing things. One of the ways that I want to suggest is that through negotiations with our CARICOM nations, for example, we have Guyana just next door, who right now is positioned to go into new oil finds. And I'm saying that we have a beautiful opportunity where we can institute training among ourselves, among our peoples, that they can take advantage of these opportunities to better themselves.
Thank you very much for that suggestion.
Okay. Yes, there are opportunities, but opportunities don't fall in your lap. We have to go out there and grasp them. With respect to the point you made about Guyana providing opportunities for us in our economic development, the government is very aware of that. And it's against that background that we are very engaged with the government of Guyana. I myself went to Guyana in February. I spent a day with the president and his senior cabinet members discussing this very matter as to what role Trinidad and Tobago could play. And I was major salesman for Trinidad and Tobago on that day, telling the Guyanese cabinet members what we have in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of equipment, personnel, experience, and so in this industry, and making that available to the people of Guyana. But of course, that does not guarantee that we will get the business, because you would have seen a former minister of the Guyanese government is saying to Guyana, don't be bullied by Trinidad and Tobago. But we are pinning our hopes on brotherly love and competence. Because you see, when we were stronger and Guyana was weak, we put a significant amount of our resources into Guyana. To the extent where when Guyana went to the Paris meeting and they took a decision to write off Guyana's debt, $2.5 billion of Trinidad and Tobago's debt was written off in Guyana. And today, we are hoping that the spirit of brotherly love continues from Guyana to Trinidad and Tobago. But of course, the Minister of Energy is due to go to Guyana to meet his counterpart soon.
Yeah.
Our private sector doing their part in Guyana, offering their business. I went to Houston to talk to Exxon. As I mentioned earlier on, I spoke to BP, Shell, and EOG. But the reason why I went to talk to Exxon is because Exxon is the major player in Guyana. They are the developer of the fields, and they own 40% of the oil. What does that mean for us? We have a refinery here in Fortin with a capacity of Point of Pay. That refinery, we spent a lot of money on that refinery, upgrading it. It now has the capacity to produce 168,000 barrels of oil. It refine 168,000 barrels of oil.
Per day.
We are only producing about 70,000 barrels of oil here. So it means that we have to find additional oil to make the refinery operational. How do we do that now? We buy that oil from the world market. So we are buying oil, more oil than we produce, to put that refinery into operation. So it seems to be logical that if there's Guyanese oil available, we can offer them some kind of arrangement which has not yet been encountered to use our facility, because we are in fact an oil refiner. Of course, as I said, we are not the only person in the business. There are other people trying to encourage Guyana to build their own refinery. So we have to be in there trying to sell our position, and hopefully, if we succeed, if Exxon agrees to bring their oil to Trinidad and Tobago in some arrangement with Trinidad and Tobago, very good. If not, we try something else. But of course, there are options for us to do things differently. With respect to the production of Guyanese oil, we have experience in doing that. And we are out there trying to get some of that business. Okay?
Next question, please.
All protocols observed. Dr. Anthony Sylvester. As I listened earlier to some of the initiative for oil, I remember this government were mentioning some initiatives to diversify the economy. And I know many of the economists at the university mention about growth poles in various parts of the country. So I'm asking, what about a model of local governments similar to Tobago? Because what we mention as businessmen in this country, a lot of our businessmen are importers, not manufacturers. And in order to earn the sort of foreign exchange and income that we so desire, we really need to have more manufacturers. What about the initiatives that have been mentioned to increase our businesses, or incubation or incubators for businesses and so forth? We would need to hear about that, the film industry, the various other type of industry, because we seem to be going around in a circle back to oil and gas. And when you read the research information, it is telling us that many of the oil and gas economies, they suffer from these cycles of demands and supply and so forth. Let me hear from you.
Thank you.
We cannot reasonably be expected at this point in time to not focus on doing the best that we can in the area of oil and gas. Secondly, I have just asked the Minister of Trade in particular to publish, along with the Minister of Finance, they'll be doing the same thing too, to publish for the benefit of the national community the whole compendium of incentives that exist in Trinidad and Tobago for the process of encouraging people to do the kinds of things you refer to, manufacturing, small business and so on. What we have to accept and address is that just having the incentives, there's no guarantee that the incentives will be taken up and utilized. Because the incentives are there. There's a huge package of incentive. But of course, whether it is cultural, whether it is economic, we are not getting the kinds of responses that one expects when you actually make the incentives available. It may be that there are other things that we have to do so as to make the incentives be utilized to give the result that the incentives are intended to have. So we do have a lot of incentives in a variety of areas, in agriculture, in manufacturing, and whatever. But there's a harvest to be had, but we don't have the farmers. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, farmers. We talk a lot about agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago. And usually hear, oh, let's get into agriculture because diversify the economy. The minister and I will be having these discussions as we go about the country looking at agricultural involvement. We're short of farmers. Young people are not going into agriculture. And the few who are going in there, right? Farming is not something you can send somebody to do because it's not being done. You require a certain kind of aptitude to want to get your hand dirty, to have sweat on your back, and to plant and wait for it to grow. There's a culture in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, feeding the criminal element in some quarters, that you can make a living instantly. And that to do so, sometimes you have to put a gun to somebody's head, or a knife to somebody's throat. And if they don't come on the street, you come in the house and meet them. Those are the societal norms of today. But we are having to examine why the positive potential of the incentives for the business sector, for the small business entrepreneur, why those incentives are not in fact generating the kinds of results that they were intended to generate.
As we are on that topic, I'd like to raise a question from our Facebook audience. Keegan Miraj would like to ask, what is your take on the aviation industry in Trinidad and Tobago, and how do you plan to facilitate its growth?
The aviation industry? Well, we have an airline, which we've had for quite some time, and we intend to continue in the business, and hopefully, as the airline strengthens its position, the business associated with the operation of that airline, like maintenance and like becoming a focal point for travel and growth of tourism in Tobago and in Trinidad, that there will be spin-offs of economic development with that. I'm pleased to tell you that CAL has reduced its subsidy call on the government from hundreds of millions of dollars in recent times. And I'm told in my recent meeting with CAL that the subsidy demand would be under $30 million this year. Consider that against the background. In the last few years, the subsidy ran from $1 billion, 700 million, 500 million, and if we're now talking about less than 30 million, something good is happening at CAL.
Yes, sir.
And that would have been influenced also by the change in oil price, because that's one of the benefits of a low oil price. But even so, there were some serious management issues. You saw today's story about one of Carl's planes, and Carl's planes are triggering off their fire alarm at will. Remember, when those planes were bought, there was a big debate in this country as to why the management of Carl at the time took the $1 billion in cash, and rather than lease planes, we bought planes. We bought those planes, and it was a bad idea, and it was a bad deal. But we stuck with that. But of course, we are trying to make the best of a bad situation, and the outlook for CAL at this point in time, you'll hear the reports going to Parliament very soon. The outlook for CAL is much better now than it was even a year ago.
All protocol observed. My name is Betty King Juba from the Fanny Village Country Trace area. My issue today, Prime Minister, is on NHA/HDC. I would like to know if there is any mechanism in place, or will there be any mechanism in place for people like myself who have been caught between NHA/HDC. My reason for saying this is I have been considered for housing in Madeline Court, San Fernando. I have been given the area, the unit, the cost, and the methods and mechanism to find financing for this unit. Only to realize that, as they said, the payment should be 10% at a certain time, and the other 90% would be in 90 days. When these units are ready, they would call. I have been calling and calling and calling, and all they are saying to me is, when the units are ready, we will call you. Now, all these units have been given out. When I call now, or when I go in to check on my status in /NHA/HDC, they are saying to me, we do not know you, because we have moved from NHA to HDC, and we cannot and will not honor the HDC document because we do not have any information on you. My question would be here, where did my information go? Where did my documents go? Okay. And why it is now I have to go right back into the system right all over again?
Okay, let me, you're from Point Fortin?
Yes, I am.
Could I suggest that this is a specific problem which is quite unusual? Could you go see your MP and he will take it up in the correct quarter? There's no separation between NHA and HDC. The HDC has replaced the NHA and has accepted, and under law represents all of NHA's business liabilities.
That's not what they are saying to me. They are saying,
wait.
Never been registered.
I don't know who you're talking to, but clearly you're talking to the wrong person. And that is why I'm asking you to go see your MP, and he is here and he will take it up in the correct quarter. What you have said there is not to be the nature of your business between you and the housing authority. There is no separation, and anybody who tells you that they're not honoring NHA, what might have happened, that there were times in the last few, sometime in the past, where the database of the NHA had been completely revamped and replaced with a new database, and it is possible that your information in that scenario may have been misplaced. I don't know that, I can't answer that tonight, but look at it through a specific intervention from somebody talking to the HDC. And if you have documentation, that documentation has to be honored, and I expect that to happen.
Thank you.
Okay? Go see your MP and he will assist you.
Good night. Protocol observed. Although the last time I came here, the last consultation, it was on unemployment, although sacrificing to obtain 2 masters and still unemployed. However, that is not my plight tonight. Tonight, I come asking for if the government could consider greater support NGOs, and also if we at Southern Gardens could obtain the vacant land that is available for us to construct a homework center and recreational facility. You know, when I consider the girl that was murdered today, Kellyanne, I recently was engaging with her because we recently opened a homework center within the community, and we asked persons from the community to volunteer their services to just assist the younger ones. And she was one of the persons I engaged, and while I was engaging her, she asked if she could also teach sewing. And I told her, well, we don't have that facility, we don't have the facility, a proper facility to support that skill. However, you know, right now she's dead. I'm seeing that as a lost opportunity to positively engage someone who wanted to contribute. So I'm asking again tonight, can we, or can there be greater support for NGOs, and also can we get assistance to acquire the vacant land in Southern Gardens? We have sent many letters.
Okay, Southern Gardens is an HDC development.
All right.
Thank you.
I would suggest that you raise that matter with your MP, who is regularly at your constituency office, I hope.
Your MP is here this evening, so he is listening to your issues.
The member of Parliament for Point Fortin is frequently at his constituency office, and if you raise that specific matter on one of the occasions when he is there, I'm sure he'll be able to assist you. With respect to the loss of your associate, these are the tragedies that we are facing. I don't know the circumstances of her death, but I want to appeal to you. Do not allow these developments to steer you away from the path that you are engaged upon, which is to be a community person, to be a positive contributor to national development.
Before I take the next question, I just want to remind you that this conversation is for issues as part of a national conversation. So if you have specific personal individual issues, this is not quite the right forum for that. Continue.
Okay, all protocols observed. My name is Veronica Edwards, and I am from the village of Latin. My question is based on agriculture. I'm so glad that you brought that up this afternoon. I am from an area that's a highly forested area. And the gentlemen in my area are very energetic. They're motivated, they're skilled, and they're very much engaged in agriculture. So since we are located so close to Forest Reserve, and which is the Petrotrin area, I would like to know what provisions you have made or the government have made to allocate the land that's around the Forest Reserve closer to Latin, Pariland, so that the young gentlemen and women in the area can use it for food. This is an area that is a great help to me as a nutritionist. And when I look at...
Thank you very much for the question.
Yes, we got the point. Could I ask the Minister of Agriculture to respond, please? Get a mic to the Minister of Agriculture. He'll respond very quickly.
Very much. Good night, and thank you very much for your question. A lot of you would be familiar with Palo Seco Agricultural Enterprises Limited. In the last 5 years for sure, and maybe even before that, PSAEL has not been actively involved in agriculture. It was established for a variety of purposes, managing leases belonging to the oil companies, but also to develop agriculture. Initially, when we came into government, one of my main focus was to deal with the Caroni 1975 limited lands. That program started in 2003, and by 2015, the distribution of leases to those former Caroni workers had not reached the desired level in terms of closing off that program. It had involved the distribution of about 9,000 leases for 2-acre parcels of land and about 7,600 leases for residential plots. So that was initially the priority, and since we've made substantial progress on that project, in the last 22 months we have been able to distribute more than 4,000 leases and bring that project under control. Very recently, I approached the Prime Minister saying to him, in accordance with a decision he had taken since we came into government, I told him that the ministry is ready to deal with the PSAEL lands, and he has taken a decision to move PSAEL from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government under the Ministry of Agriculture. The difference with the ministry dealing with PSAEL lands is that we do not have to deal through the Commissioner of State Lands, which has presented itself as being a very long and complicated process. We're currently working on a plan to activate those lands from PSAEL in the southwest. A particular area of focus for us is in the area of livestock, also cocoa production and other short crops. So those are the lands in southwest Trinidad that the ministry, through PSAEL, in accordance with government's policy of activating those lands for agriculture, those are the lands which are going to be offered to persons nationally, but primarily in southwest Trinidad, to be able to activate agriculture and also expand some of what they're doing now. I say that with a statement that I make whenever I talk about lands. We have people who are interested in lands only for the purpose of calling themselves the holder of 5 or 10 or 20 acres of land. What we are interested in existing farmers who wish to expand what they currently do, and serious applicants who wish to embark on agriculture, particularly those areas that we believe that we could increase our production in Trinidad. So that's the way forward for Southwest Trinidad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rambarat. Now there are 10 persons in the line, and we are scheduled to close off the session at 10 p.m. So we will close off the lines at the existing point that they are, and I will ask the remaining questioners to keep your questions very brief. Persons who will not be able to ask their questions, don't be alarmed. We do have a desk outside with a citizen facilitation manager and staff who will take your questions, and they will be addressed and the responses relayed to you. So the remaining persons, we will not have anyone else joining the line, and I ask you to be very brief and make your questions quickly. Gentlemen.
Good night. All protocols observed. My name is Mr. Peterson Morales. I came from all the way New Grant. I observe we are in a culture in Trinidad to just criticize. So I want to suggest to Trinidad and Tobago and us on a whole, the Prime Minister gave us a lot of information tonight, very good information, critical information, and I want to suggest that we tend to look at information and facts before we make statements or just campaign against things that are good for us and for the development of the country. Also, I want to recommend to the government, let us look back to look into the fact of the Girl Guides and the Scouts and so on, to introduce them back to the schools in a positive way, in order to have more discipline on the children, to curb the crime and the way the children are. The Girl Guides and the Scouts are very important.
Fear of God.
Nowadays, we live in an era where
Thank you very much. That is an excellent suggestion for increasing engagement amongst our primary school children. Thank you very much.
Good night, protocol. My name is Owen Alexander from Festival Village, Lombre. We know there's a wonder in the world right in Lombre, which is the Pitch Lake. And that used to create thousands of jobs for people. Here it was done. We used to get shooks from Guyana, build the buckets right here, fill them up, water them, stamp them and pack them, all right? That Deepwater Harbor was mashed up to put the LNG plant. Now listen what happened. When boats come in Brighton, thousands of men used to get work. Because the faster you do it, the more money you get. And
Can you get to the question part, please?
I'm putting a solution to solving the problem, not dependent on oil only. Because I used to work in the oil field too. What they did too, they capped down wells right. I was after the petroleum engineer. I was the artificial lift operator. And one of the things that they did, capped down wells making 100 and something barrels, and no LNG plant was put there. So what I'm saying is that the Pitch Lake was not capped down. What we could do is introduce back up ships coming from Guyana, let the pen and them get to work, load the boil pitch, load the buckets, water it, stamp it, and have it back there when boats come again. I want to know, is that will be revenue coming in beside oil? Is that suggestion I'm making to the government? Okay.
Thank you very much for that suggestion in increasing productivity of the pitching.
Minister, pleasant good night. All protocol observed.
Let me just say that against that suggestion that Trinidad Lake Asphalt is in fact an integral part of our industrial development. It's operating, and it might very well be that what used to be the best idea 50 years ago is not the best idea today. There have been some changes, and sometimes you just have to work with these changes. But the Trinidad Lake Asphalt is there and remains an integral part of our effort.
Pleasant good night. I'm Dennis Lamy from Hollywood. Point Fortin. All protocol observed. I just have a direct question for the health minister. He's here tonight, and I have some evidence here. I heard the Prime Minister talk about the desalination plant in Point Fortin, the water. But one morning I woke up and I opened my pipe, and this is sea sand and mud in my pipe. So I want the health minister to inspect this and see if this is good for human consumption. I see some good water up there. I don't know if that is the water that we have in Point, but this is the water why we have to buy water or catch rainwater. So the health minister can take this and do some samples.
Is it that what is being said that the water supply to Point Fortin is substandard in quality? Okay, I hear you. If that is what is being said, I've heard it. Okay? And we certainly would look into it. So I wouldn't ask the Minister of Health to adjudicate on your bottle of water, but certainly we in Trinidad and Tobago ought to have in our distribution system water that is potable and safe. So we'll look into that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Prime Minister, we see last night and night before, I've been watching television, and the president mentioned that Trinidad has had the most crime, and then in Guyana, I've been watching crime watch, and the prison of water burned down. At about 2 p.m. on Sunday, and mother the ship, and Trinidad is happy by up there, and 2 firemen get injured. I told them very much. 2 firemen get injured in the fight.
Thank you very much for your comment.
The prison burned down. 2 p.m. on Sunday. To me, the prison that did that, to my thinking, I was in very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Minister, your birthday in 1949, I'm the same time, 1949 upon my ID upon 1949. I'm the same age upon 1949.
Thank you very much for your comment, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. You see, I'm not alone. I have a soulmate, right? Yeah, we heard the news in Guyana, and you're right. When your brother's beard is on fire, wet yours. So we are wetting our beard in the Trinidad and Tobago. Those are some very disturbing news items with respect to the Guyanese prison. And we are at the level of the National Security Council here, focusing on bringing about some improvement with the prison population in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's work on that. We're running out of time, so keep your questions short.
Good night, everybody. My name is Shaman Simmons.
Please speak up, I'm not hearing.
My name is Shaman Simmons from Point Fortin, Warden Road 148. I just would like for some of the people from my age, like 19, teenagers and stuff, like to get better jobs to us. Well, I didn't really do good in school and stuff and things like that, but I know I need to go. And
I'm afraid I'm not hearing you very clearly.
I would like to go to a trade school. But
you like to go to a trade school?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And but my parents is not no rich people, so.
Okay. Hear you.
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking what facilities do we have for non-academic youths to find gainful employment?
Yeah.
Go to the mic and answer me for me, please. I'm afraid I'm trying to catch the point.
I thank you very much to the head table. There's a team that's working under the name of the Retirees Returning to the Workforce. And part of our initiative is for people like himself who we consider the below zeros. And we are trying to gather in terms of preparing them where the skills is important, and those who may need other competencies, we are working in order to build them.
When you say we, who is we?
The we comprise a team of people under the Retirees Returning to the Workforce, and we are moving throughout.
No, what is your designation?
Retirees returning.
Retirees
returning to the workforce.
Is that a government program
No,
or
it's
an NGO program?
It's an NGO program.
An NGO program.
That's right.
Good.
So we are moving throughout the Southwest Peninsula, of which Point is also one of the areas that we have identified. We have Labre, we have Palo Seco, the whole area is there. And what we are doing is we are capturing persons like himself who may have been out of the system, which we consider below zero. And we are instituting training, we have people doing training, we have people who do motivational to get them at some point so that they can be employed.
So something is being done.
Something is being done.
And you can reach it.
And we are going to ask the gentleman.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question.
Yes.
All practical observed. Prime Minister, you specifically are come to speak to. I have been writing a lot of letters to you in respect to some of your ministers. They're not functioning as expected. Some years ago, you came to behind the market in the PNM office and you spoke to us about problem you was having with the Prime Minister. You gave us some advice and I continue to take this advice. I got a lot of problem with people, but Mr. Manning did understand what I was saying and he correct a lot of them. Now, I have given you some letters and your secretary told me that you sent it to Mr. Hines and Mr. Hines say he's dealing with it or something like that. But I know nothing about that. I sent back a letter to you. Probably you won't have time to read it. So I'll advise that when you go back, look at that.
What were the letters about specifically?
I have some money to get from WASA and they're not paying me. WASA not paying. I have $105,000 from WASA.
Okay, please. A person's problem is the biggest problem in the world. Whatever the size of that problem, for him, that is the biggest problem in Trinidad and Tobago. And if you are an employee of WASA,
pardon?
You are a WASA employee or contractor?
I did a contract with them.
Contractor.
And they pay me some of I got sick and I could not continue as I expected to do. I hired somebody, sublet them to another man and he did some wrong, I get rid of him. They show me that I have $105,000 to collect.
So WASA owes you some money?
Yes, this is
Could you do me a favor, please?
Yeah.
Could you go and see your MP or the office, the table outside there tonight?
Look,
the table outside tonight?
Yes, I want to
put it there on the table. It's going to get to us and we're going to raise it for you at WASA.
Yeah, but I have something to tell you.
You're running out of time.
No, sir, you had to hear me.
You're running out of time.
One question per person, please.
They are very disrespectful, some of them.
Who is that?
The mayor from Point Fortin and even Mr. Dillon. He did try a little, but he tell me all they could do is write the other people. And that is all they could do. So this is how your minister operating. They write a letter and nobody answers, they're done with that. So we had to suffer. I want you to correct that. This is why I write letter to you.
Okay, all right, I get your point.
The letter states that you should make appointment. If you cannot come or do it, send somebody to interview me. And I will explain a lot of things you're supposed to know.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for your assistance and for your letter. But
may we have the next question, please?
Let's hear the next person, please.
Good evening, my Prime Minister. My name is Nicole Anthony. And I have one question to ask. Now, they just recently killed my daughter and my son-in-law. And me get no justice. And that woman now get killed with child what she was seen, and they hired the whole people already. So I want to know what is going on with my case with my daughter and my son-in-law.
I'm afraid I don't have that information to respond to you now.
No.
But so,
what I am saying.
I'm not. You're talking about your specific situation.
Yes. What I'm saying is that just the police hold them, hold people suspected. How come they hold nobody that killed my daughter and my son-in-law?
Well, when a crime is committed, the police will set about to try to find the perpetrator.
Yeah, but
and it's not on every occasion that they are successful or immediately successful. So if on one occasion they were successful in one crime and they're still working on the other crime, I trust that they will find the persons so that you can get justice.
If the police told me that they know the person that because they came into my house and killed my daughter, if they tell me that they knew the driver of the car that came in, they know the fella, why don't they arrest him? So I will get justice.
I'm afraid I cannot answer that question because I don't have the relevant information. I don't have the information to answer that specifically.
I know you don't have it, but I wanted you to look into it, please, because of that, I have a next daughter in a month and 2 days that fell down and died. So I'm looking for justice.
Well, ma'am, may I suggest if you leave the information at the table, we can conduct an investigation, we can inquire through the Minister of National Security on your specific case, and I'm sure he will get back to you on the circumstances of your case. Thank you very much. Gentlemen.
Madam Chairperson, Mr. Prime Minister, all protocol observed. I share the pain of Brother Simmons. I left this country 52 years ago without a high school diploma. I'm back here again as an engineer, MBA, and 44 years in oil and gas in more than 19 countries around the world. I have given Brother Simmons my number, and we'll see what we can do for him tomorrow, give a job in Liberty. Mr. Prime Minister, we are talking about rig repair and rig building. In 2014, yours truly brought Garda Tree to Liberty, first time the second largest jackup in the world came to Trinidad to repair. And most of these faces here, I know them because we had more than 320 persons on that rig, 24 hours a day for 4 months. So I've been around this business for a while. I want to bring to your attention, Mr. Prime Minister, do you know the rig building program in Liberty can come to a screeching halt very quickly? About 2 months ago, the waterfront in front of Tufco was leased to a foreign company, Peterson Company in Aberdeen, Scotland.
Do you have a question or are you?
No, my question, in addition, the southwestern peninsula needs growth. There is a port proposed, a container port in Liberty, because right now, there is no way the current facility in Liberty can support any growth. The question is this: are we having plans to build a container port or general port in Liberty? Because the IB study, which was done a year ago, recommended the port be built in Liberty, because unless we have a port here, the same way Point Lisas helped develop the industrial estate in Point Lisas, we have a 3,000 acres estate to develop here, and a container port is much needed. And
so your question is, do we have plans to build a container port in Liberty?
Well, it was recommended many, many times that many prior governments
Thank you for the question. I would...
There are investors and there are private equity funded. Thank you. With provision for P3 arrangement, public-private partnership.
Just to say that Liberty has its advantage, and one of its major advantages has a natural deep water harbor at Brighton. and at Labitco Estate. There have been several proposals to build all types of things there. But a proposal is not an investment decision. There are a lot of things that are on the table, but there have to be a lot of more market research, and you have to have specific investors willing to come and pump the money into it. We have not reached that stage as yet.
We have the next question, please. Gentlemen.
A blessed and pleasant good night to everybody here. Hello?
Yeah.
My name is Rondell Mickey Glasgow. You all are in my secondary school. I graduated here in 2010. It is very emotional for me to see you here. First, let me commend you all on being here and making this a success. I'm very happy to see you, the minister, the prime minister of this country right here in Point. That's the first thing I have to say. The second thing now, I'll come into my question. Now I have a lot of questions, so I'm only going to choose this one because I'm only allotted one. But this is the one that is closest to my heart. And my question is, what exactly, I want specifics, what exactly is being done in our police force, in our army, to weed out the rogue elements that plague our society? And when I say plague our society, I'm not talking about us common folks. I'm talking about within the army. I'm talking about within the police service.
Thank you very much for that question.
That's a very, very important question, because successful policing relies very heavily on support from the community that is being policed. And one of the problems in Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding the large amount of resources assigned, both human and financial, to this question of policing, is that we still have, or we continue to have, a growing lack of confidence in the police service. And in that situation, the job of policing becomes difficult and sometimes impossible. That confidence will not be restored if the population does not trust the police. And because of the number of instances of reports of wrongdoing, sometimes serious wrongdoing, on the parts of officers within the service, we are struggling to restore that confidence in the police service. And that is why we have said to those involved who are managing the system that we ought to have a zero tolerance on misconduct within the ranks of the police and the general security services. And that is the yardstick by which you're operating. We need to ensure that we move to a state where persons who are not worthy of wearing the uniform of these services are removed from the service. But of course, we are a society with a series of layers of protection even for and when wrongdoing takes place. I remember only recently, not too long ago, we changed a law in the parliament to allow the dismissal of an officer if such officer has been convicted. Because there were instances where officers were charged and convicted, but there were arrangements where they could hold their position in the service while some tribunal, some second kind of trial is taking place. We've changed that not too long ago. We also know that there are some very wrong things taking place in the service, and those things need to be identified, and the management and the government need to be able to stand up and say, if you are found guilty or you are charged with these accusations are made against you, there are consequences. And it's the police service, the army, the prison service, all of them. Because if you think it is bad when an average citizen commits a crime like that, when it's committed by a uniformed officer who has the trust and the imprimatur of law, it's far worse. So among the things we're doing in the police service is trying to weed out from the service persons who are unsuitable for the jobs that they are holding in the police service. It's happening too slowly, but it's going to have to happen. Okay?
Good evening, all protocols observed. My name is Megan George. I'm a concerned parent and uprising teacher who resides in the vicinity of Captiville. We talk about inclusive education and equity and education for all. Yet we have a preschool in a community center for over 40 years, where the ceiling collapsed and there's no form of security. And the therapeutic and life skills center, which caters to persons with special needs, which has established for 13 years through a church. My question is, how do you intend to help to rectify the problem we are having and experiencing with the education system due to lack of appropriate staff ratio, facilities, access to equipment and materials and resources to ensure that those who are already in the system and the ones who are coming can get their proper education needs met so they can rise to their full potential?
Thank you for that question.
That question is so long and so heavy, so weighty, that I think I'm just going to ask the education minister to respond to that. Get him a mic, please. That's why he's the minister.
Thank you very much for your question. I want to assure the questioner that at the Ministry of Education we are doing everything possible to ensure that our children receive a quality education. This is what I've been saying for quite some time now. With respect to the Early Childhood Center that is in a state of dilapidation, I want to assure you that during the July-August vacation period, we have earmarked a number of schools where we are going to fix those schools so that when school reopens in September, those questions or those problems will be solved. In addition to the staff ratio, the staff pupil ratio, again, that is something that we are working at because we know that in a number of cases, we have too many students in classes for one teacher. And only today we have had an intensive and extensive discussion on this issue, and we are doing our best to ensure that our students, particularly those who suffer some type of disability, those students will have an equal access to education. That is the mantra of this government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Garcia. May I have the next question, please?
Good night, everyone. My question is also for the Minister of Education. As a concerned parent of my child attends the Fanny Village Government School, that school burnt down April the 16th, I think 2015. About 30 plus years before that school, and I was told by the PTA, they were promised a school. Today the school is in a community center, and my child is in children are in containers basically in the school.
Which area is that?
Fanny Village Government.
Fanny Village?
Yes.
Okay.
So my question to the Minister of Education, I would like to know when would these children get a school, a comfortable school for them to be in? Thank you.
Minister of Education, please.
Thank you very much. Earlier this year, the MP for the area and myself visited a number of schools in this area, including the Fanny Village Government School. What we have found is that the new school that was being constructed in a swamp. And what has been happening is that the school is sinking. We are taking measures, one, to ensure that those who were responsible for the designs would be held accountable, because you can't understand how a school can be built in a swamp. So we are taking measures to ensure that somebody pays the penalty. In addition to that, we have identified a number of schools that we are going to continue the construction, and as soon as we have the requisite funds, the Fanny Village Government School will be among those that we will be constructing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Gentleman on the right.
Good night, Point Fortin. My name is Michael Button. I'm from Rio Claro. Good night to the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. I have a message for you. My message for you is from the late Prime Minister.
Please continue.
Please allow me to deliver his message. It's my message.
I cannot give nobody else but the Prime Minister.
I'll tell you what, after this, come see me on the side and you give me it's my message, you give it to me. So come and see me on the side.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Now, before we have the last question, let me remind any of you who still have questions that you want answered, please give your information to the desk outside and we will provide an answer and get back to you. We'll now have our final question for this evening.
Good night, everyone.
Please listen quietly.
All protocols observed. My name is Joan Stanislaus. I'm from Parallel Village, Guapo. My question again is to the Minister of Education. I represent the Point Fortin Preschool Teachers Association. We were advised that it was announced that there's a secession on purchasing of space for private preschoolers. We are asking the Minister of Education to review that, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So we have now come to the end of our conversations with the Prime Minister here at Point Fortin East Secondary School. We'd like to thank all of you in our live audience for being present. We'd also like to thank all of our viewers on television. I will now invite our Prime Minister to make some final comments before we dismiss for the evening. Prime Minister.
Well, once again, we only had 2 hours. We took 2.25 hours. Let me thank you all very much for taking the time out and participating in this exercise. 2 hours is a short time when you have it, when you're talking on so many subjects. Certainly, we wouldn't have dealt with every issue and we wouldn't have had all the answers. But I trust that you would have gathered that there are important issues attracting the attention of the government. We need to have our priorities right. We need to be a little focused, a little patient, and we need to communicate more. We will come back again sometime and we'll continue talking to one another. We are the government, we are your government. You are the people who we're supposed to serve. And while we may not be able to solve all your problems tomorrow, I'm sure we leave here tonight knowing what some of your priorities are, and with our limited resources, we'll focus to bring the relief to you in that same order of priority. So once again, we are fortunate as a people to live in this country. It's far from perfect, but with every positive effort, we will contribute to improving the quality not only of our own life, but on the lives of all our citizens. So thank you all again and get home safe.